electricity run in many cases, not in all cases. And then just one word to someone who's involved in the Vermont efficiency program. Having gone through the energy audit ourselves and experienced the whole process, I have some concerns about cost controls for local contractors. Because if you're like most Vermonters, you've done some work in your house yourself, or you've hired, been your own general contractor, and you know what stuff costs. And when the cost of fixing some of this stuff comes in really high, and you're like, wow, how did you get to that number? And that's where it kind of breaks down, and the estimates are just kind of vague estimates. I think if you're used to working with a quality contractor, you're used to having a much clearer picture of those costs explained to you up front before you make your investment, which you have to do in order to get that investment, back towards the credit. So I'm interested in the heat exchange and also how you deal with the sort of the fresh air question around the light.
I can address the fresh air pretty quickly.
Yeah.
When we do a house, we actually have to look at the total cubic volume of your house and what the air exchange is. There's a formula we use, and if we tighten the house up too much, we are required by BPI standards to bring in fresh air.
Yeah.
So that's a control that actually we're overseeing. All of us who can do these audits are overseen, and we have to do that. It's something we should do, but any BPI auditor should, and BPI contractor needs to do that.
Did you do that in house in Richmond?
Yes.
What did that cost?
We put a timer on her fan, and actually that's all we needed to do because her house didn't reach the level where it would impact her in terms of moisture in the house or anything like that.
The fan?
Yep. We put a new fan in at the Panasonic, which is a continued use fan, and we put it on a timer, and that timer comes on periodically. She didn't have to turn it on very much because she still has pretty leaky windows.
Yeah.
So she's got the good flow like you're talking about. But every house we do, that's a careful. The other thing that we're very careful about is that if we tighten up the house, and this is something you probably would be, you should know more, is that if we tighten it at 2 houses and it's an atmospherically vented combustion appliance, we could potentially backdraft that unit and bring in monoxide into your house.
Yep.
So these are all things that you should hire a professional that knows this stuff and do an analysis before you start, winging it, because these are all very important things you're talking about. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
There was also the lifespan of the heat pump.
In terms of the lifespan of the heat pump, the Mitsubishi heat pumps that a lot of people have been installing throughout the state, they have a 7-year warranty and
Did you say 7?
7-year warranty and a 15 to 20-year lifespan. If you think of the cost of running the heat pump at 1/3 the cost of oil or propane, 15% less than natural gas, then that's a cost of replacing that heat pump that's going to come in 15 years. You're going to know that's coming, and the operating cost is so much less that you're going to be able to save enough over those years to pay for that next piece of technology that comes out.
The heat pump itself is not very expensive. You can probably get a 12,000 BTU for under $2,000. And once the system's in place, swapping that out is a pretty minor install. So it's still, the lifespan of it's still a pretty good deal. And PV and the whole hot water there, 20, 30 years is what those systems are rated. So between the two of them, you're good for 20 years.
And you're done paying them off well before that.
Yeah. Half that time is already paid off.
So we have time, for one more question. I did want to address one other thing that you asked, though. Which is, where's the electricity coming from if you haven't gone solar yet on that home? So it's a very good question. That was one of the first things that I looked at when we first started looking into heat pumps. So even if you're getting all of the electricity for that heat pump from fossil fuels on the grid, you are still reducing your greenhouse gas environmental footprint and actually overall energy use because the unit at the home is so efficient. Obviously, we would strongly advocate for people doing on-site renewables with them for all the reasons that we've talked about. But even if you can't do that at the same time, and there's a few year gap for whatever reason, in those few years, you're still, basically winning on all fronts, just not quite as much.
So I had a question about the heat pump and water heaters. You mentioned the house that you retrofitted doesn't have a furnace running in the basement to keep the basement warm, right? Or does it normally?
It does.
Oh, it does, that's right. Well, I have a basement where I'm mainly using wood heat now, so my furnace is only occasionally supplementing. So I read an article where it's gonna end up cooling the basement more because it's pulling some of that heat out. And I think it was in the Brattleboro Reformer. So my understanding is that it probably wouldn't cool it enough to be a danger of making my pipes freeze, but this article mentioned the person who had it done actually made their first floor of their home a little cooler because they didn't have an insulated floor between the basement and the floor. So I'm just wondering how that would work if someone doesn't have a furnace that's kicking off this extra heat for the hot water that you use.
The one house that we were talking to about this, they do heat with wood a lot.
Okay, that's what you were saying.
They heat with wood, and we were talking about putting in ductwork that has a relay on it, so that when the heater kicks on, it has a small, low wattage fan that pulls the heat from around the Woodstove area and distributes it in the vicinity of the heat pump downstairs. So that way you're basically taking wood and moving it downstairs to be heated in addition. So.
And that's actually required, or would it?
No, it's not required. The basement will cool down. The ones we have put it in, they do cool down. If it goes below 45 degrees in the basement, it'll kick into the electric backup. It's a coil, a resistance heat. So we have never had it actually kick in on the ones we've installed. So basements stay right around 45 to 50 degrees if there's no heat in them at all. So, but it will cool your basement down, yes.
And we've been recommending that if you're going to switch to an electric resistance, to a heat pump water heater, and you don't have a heat producing, boiler or furnace in the basement, that you select a model that can easily be set to electric resistance mode. So some of the models have different operation modes, and if you have a home where you have no heat in the basement, it's nice to be able to set it to be on electric resistance mode, so not using the heat pump, just operating as a regular old electric resistance water heater for the 2 or 3 months when you really don't want to cool your basement down much more. But having a well air-sealed and insulated basement really helps to reduce that window of time when you would want to come out of heat pump mode and operate it in electric resistance mode. So if you have a very leaky basement and an uninsulated basement, then you can't tolerate dropping the temperature in the basement much more. But if you have a well-insulated basement and a well air-sealed basement, then the amount of time that you're worried about the temperature dropping down there gets to be just, a couple of months a year.
That's all the time, unfortunately, we've got for you guys. Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it.